What's your biggest screenwriting regret?
That I didn't move to LA sooner. I had my first opportunity to move to Los Angeles in 2009, I think it was. I was still living in Michigan at the time, working on movie sets as a production assistant. And myself, another PA, and a makeup artist were all discussing moving out here together. Then one of them had a sudden, like, immediate death in the family that now so now they had to be the sole provider for their family.
Oh gosh.
And so they were like, okay, now I can't make the jump out to LA. And without them, the other person was like, well, I don't want to go if she's not going to go, kind of thing, you know. And so it left just me, and I could absolutely afford to still come out here on my own because I had saved up all the money from like the 5 or 6 movies and 2 TV shows that I had PA'd on out there. But I just didn't. I don't know if it was one of those fear things where, like, it was a fear of the unknown sort of thing, you know. Whereas, like, I was gonna be fine coming out here with them as like a safety net sort of thing, because at least I would know somebody, because I didn't know anybody out here. And so I didn't have the courage, the film courage, to come out to LA when I could have the first time. And so it ended up like losing me, you know, so many years, because by the time I did move out here, it was 2016, you know. So now it's like I've lost like 8 years of potential experience I could have had out here.
Well, there was a lot of fear in 2009 because of the recession.
Right.
So a lot of people didn't know still what was going to happen, and a lot of speculation. So, you know, I wouldn't beat yourself up over that. It was a scary time for a lot of people.
Sure. And it's one of those things where you could, you know, you could talk yourself up about any bad decision you make and make it seem like, oh, well, it's understandable that you made that choice. At the end of the day, I wussed out. I should have just come out here. Obviously, certain things would have gone differently. I would have never met my fiance.
Okay.
I love you. You know, and stuff. Or maybe I would have, but, you know, by that point, I would have been hopefully bigger by now. But it's one of those things where, like, I feel like it was a missed opportunity that I could have started my life much sooner, I guess. Rather than, you know, I would have been in my 20s out here. I could have gotten a job, you know, as like either an assistant somewhere, you know, whether it be a PA on a set or being an assistant like in an office or something like that. But now nobody wants to hire a 36-year-old person, you know, as like the bottom level thing, because like the pay is like minimum wage at this point, you know. And it's like when I'm 20, minimum wage is fantastic. I can live on minimum wage. Of course, there's ramen noodles. What can go wrong? Now that I'm in my 30s, minimum wage would kill me. You know, I would never be able to afford my apartment on minimum wage. Couldn't, you know, hold up my current standard of living and stuff now. So it's like, I feel like I lost out on the chance to live within the means that I had when I was in my 20s, rather than the means that I've procured over the years with the experience now. So I have more life experience, but it's less experience I could have been sharing in Hollywood and moving up the ranks already. So it's like I'm already starting at square one in my mid-30s rather than in my mid-20s.
Well, this is total cliche, but I don't know if I always believe this, but this is the cliche saying, everything happens for a reason.
Sure.
I don't always subscribe to that. And I know that it's just like, can I get any cheesier? But
right.
If we take that and dissect it as much as it should be like on a mug and, you know, somebody in front of somebody's computer, do you think that's true? Or do you think that we tell ourselves that?
I think it's a combination, because obviously you can't, it depends on if you believe in fate, I guess. I'm not a big subscriber in fate because it takes away any choices I would have had, I guess. So on that side, like, it doesn't work out that everything's supposed to happen the way it's supposed to happen, because you don't know how it's supposed to happen.
That's true.
And you can also, if things happen in a different order, you're going to end up in a different place. So it's kind of a thing of, you would have a different life. Which life would be better? The life you would have had or the life you do have? So I don't really know. I don't know where I would end up. Like having been an extra 8 years in Los Angeles, would I now be the next Shonda Rhimes, or would I still be Travis Seppala trying to be Shonda Rhimes? Would I have a lovely, gorgeous fiance, or would I be alone, or would I have a different fiance? Would I be hooking up with actresses? There's no way of knowing what would have happened.
This is the screenplay right here. Okay. Okay.
It's, I think there's actually a script that I just read. It was a pilot for this current pilot season. I don't know if it got picked up or not. I think it got picked up the pilot. They haven't announced if it's going. I think it's still shooting. And I can't remember the name of it. I'm terrible at remembering titles. But it is a script that follows along this character. And the show starts with him at like a crossroads where he has the option of either, after his graduation, of either going with his parents, going with his friends, or going with this girl he likes. Oh. And then the story from there trisects, I guess you would call it, since he has 3 different paths, what his life would be in each of the scenarios.
Oh, interesting.
And so the show kind of goes along that, where like it'll be like seeing him, the path where he went with his parents because his dad and his granddad were both cops. Now he becomes a cop. And so it follows along him being a detective now in the city. The path where he went and followed his friend is he went, because he had graduated with a medical license, he went and just became a doctor, and now he's a doctor. And then the third path is he ended up like opening his own business and is living with the girl now and stuff. And all 3 of them have the identical overall scenario that is happening, and how it's happening differently based on where he's at. So, for instance, in the pilot episode, which obviously I haven't read past pilot because it hasn't gotten picked up yet, is there's a congressman who gets assassinated. That in one aspect, as the cop, he's following the assassination and trying to solve it. When he's a doctor, he actually saved the senator, so he didn't die from the assassination attempt. And then when he's with the friend, or when he has his business or whatever, he's in the wrong place at the wrong time, and he gets killed instead of he gets shot rather, and has to go to the hospital and stuff. And it shows like how his life would be drastically altered in these 3 choices. So I don't know where the show is going to go from there, but the pilot, I was like, oh my God, this is brilliant. Like, and that kind of goes along with what you're saying of like, would it be better? Like, was I destined or determined to be where I am now, versus had I made the choice to come out here when I could have? It follows along that same thing as this TV pilot of like, there are different forks in the road and each one leads to a different place. If you want to go with science fiction or quantum physics and stuff, of like multiple parallel Earths, there's the multi-Earth theory where an Earth exists for every possibility. So any choice you've ever made in your life, it automatically created new parallel universes. You're in the one where you made your choice, but then over here you made the other choice. And there's infinite number of those. And so I don't mean to go all quantum theory and stuff,
great.
But it's one of those things. I don't know if I think I'm destined to be anywhere, because there's so many outcomes that are possible. I don't know if I'm in the best place, or if I would have been in the best place, or if there's still best place, or if what's happening.
I think we can all look at our lives and say, well, if I had just done this earlier, but we don't know if we'd done it earlier, maybe we wouldn't be prepared to handle certain things.
Right. But you would also be in a different place entirely, and would have like, for instance, I had one choice that I could have made. The choice I made was to stay in my hometown and go to work and be a sous chef in my hometown, or I could have gone to Yellowstone National Park and started off as a dishwasher there and worked at the rinks. How would things have changed if I would have not stayed home with my parents and gone to Yellowstone? Like, who would I have met? What would I have learned? What would have happened to me? I would be a very different human being with that experience than I was staying home working in a local restaurant. So I don't know if coming to LA 8 years earlier when I could have would have made a huge impact, or if it were either for the better or for the worse,
Right. Yeah, I don't think for any of us we totally know.
Yeah.
Do you think a great writer will live forever through their work?
I'm going to say it depends on the story. We remember F. Scott Fitzgerald for The Great Gatsby, but he wrote so many other things that most people don't even know exists. You know, he wrote other novels. He was even a TV writer. I could never tell you what episodes of anything he wrote, but I know he wrote television. But it's like everyone remembers him because The Great Gatsby, like, is all pray at the altar of Gatsby sort of thing, you know. So, but if he hadn't written The Great Gatsby, he's still a great writer and wrote all this other stuff, but nobody's ever read this other stuff. So, and I also feel that it depends on how timely it is versus like current locale, I guess. Stuff I write today, 20 years from now, are gonna seem blasé and like out of place and out of touch and everything, you know, like we're in like a field now, looking at comedy, for instance. Stuff that is funny now won't be funny later. Like, you look at an old Simpsons episode from like the early 90s, it's not funny anymore and is kind of like racist in parts, you know? The whole thing with Apu, the character, that they're apparently axing Apu completely or whatever, because people are complaining that it's racist. But those complaints were probably still there in the 90s, we just didn't hear them as much because the internet has grown and people become more vocal on there, you know, and are able to have a place to vent and stuff. So, like, for instance, when I was a kid, me and my sister are big fans of A Christmas Story. Laughed my butt off at the end scene when they're in the Chinese restaurant, but now that's like the most racist scene you can imagine, basically, you know. And it's like, it was still racist then, but it was like we didn't know better, I guess, as a society, and the way that we as a society have evolved made it obsolete and crass and should not be laughed at anymore. So things from now may not live on, you know, beyond. So like, you could write an amazing story, but 10 years from now, your story may have zero relevance, sort of thing.